1212 Radio Culture. Blessed Sabbath, one and all. Give thanks and praises. Sata Masagana, Ulagiza Imasgana. Yes, indeed. I here once more on the groundation level. Yes, indeed. We're here to reason together. Yes, indeed. I'm sure that last week you did not miss that interview with the man, Ejaba Opuni. Yes, indeed. Enough reactions before and after that interview, you know. But as I would say, yes, let our voices be heard and let discerning minds discern. As so, me say. What I say, people are free to talk, but at the same time, people with minds and brains are also free to discern. So as I would say, we would let everybody have their say and then let everybody make up their mind. But today we're going on a different tangent. We are reaching all the way to Australia. And we're going to go reason with a man, Jababze. Frog bench. That's a coded one. Very few people understand that one. Frog stool. But yes, indeed, we're going over there to Australia right now. We're reaching out to the man, Jababze. And we are going to be reasoning about a whole range of things. Central among them, Rastafari in Ghana. We've been talking about this for a while, but we really want to get deeper into it, you understand? Because Rasta is a thing where people would give you different things, what they think, you know? Just like we saw last week with Ejaba Opuni, who had his own interpretations, like, you know, the Hurrah, Sen of Fatah and all that stuff that he was saying. But today, like I said, we're reaching out to Jababze in Australia, and we are going to be talking to my brother Babzi about his own take on Rastafari, especially Rastafari in Ghana, where it came from, where it's headed, and we'll just make it a conversation. Blessed love, Babzi.
Yes, blessed Anna. Okay.
Yes, blessed Sabbath, same wise.
Yes, beloved, everything blessed, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So let's get straight into it. Rasta.
Right. Yes, King.
First of all, this is not the type of interview where you ask who you are, and all them type of thing. That you understand, because I know it's all same brethren and everything within every day. But just so people get clearly what we're talking about, because this is radio, and you know some people will be seeing it on social media. But who are we speaking with? Babzi. Who's Babzi?
Well, Babzi is a Rasta man from Ghana, and living, you know, living in Europe for now. But you know, he's a Rasta man, an African, you know, and living a natural life. That is to begin with. That's why I identify with Rasta. And then, you know, I am actually in the faculty of education, because I believe, you know, life is all about education. It's about learning, you know, and learning is a two-way activity, you know. It's about receiving and giving out, you know. So we learn to live, and we actually use this knowledge to free us from ignorance and to free us from problems. And it is the same way we use the same knowledge to make us, you know, independent of problems and situations, and just to also be able to live free amongst I and I brethren or I and I community. You know, so you're talking to just a natural man,
natural Rasta man. But just by the way of the reasoning, you understand, because sometimes it's important to know where the knowledge is coming from. You understand? Because
Yeah.
we're in the age where a lot of um, information is put out there, and it's important to figure out where the information comes from. You understand? So to me, it's very important to. That's why I asked who you are, not that like I said, this is a personality interview or anything like that. But I wanted to hone in on the fact that you are an educationist, right?
Right.
Nice. All right, Babsy, what is
Yeah.
Rastafari?
Well, basically, Rastafari is a name which otherwise, is coming from an Amharic word, Rastafari. You might call it, you might say it's a title. But then when we say Rastafari from the Afrocentric point of view or from the Ethiopian Amharic, remember say, when we even talk about Ethiopia, it doesn't limit itself to the geographical location of the land around the Nile.
Currently known as Ethiopia, yes.
Yeah, Ethiopia originally supposed to mean sunburned faces. That means all we dark skinned people, all we Africans can identify to begin with as Ethiopians. But in a which way, there is a land in Africa along the Nile called Ethiopia, which is geographically defined, and this land have a language called Amharic. So out of this language, we have the word Rastafari, which means the head creator. Otherwise, and yeah, so Rastafari movement, as many people want to lay claim that it began from Jamaica around the 30s, following a prophecy made by Marcus Garvey. I believe as Africans, we have been living that life in anciency way back before the 30s or before, these Asian definitions have come around.
There's no question about that, Babsy. But is it also true that the movement, because Rastafari, I believe, is also a movement, right?
Right.
So when we're talking about the movement aspect, can we debunk the fact that it actually, ignited in Jamaica?
Yes, I can necessarily, lay claim to that because you have pillars like Marcus Garvey who did prophesy, for Africans or for Black people to identify with their own king who will be crowned or who is crowned from Africa. So based on that, and there were many Black people living in the diaspora. For instance, the Jamaicans, they were all taken or imported or kind of exported from Africa, if you want to, say it so. If I am allowed to use the word, in terms of, as against slavery or the slave trade. So I would say that Black people were imported or exported from Africa into the West or into the diaspora. And then again, based on the subhuman treatment, based on the suffering, based on the struggle, based on how inhuman we were being treated as a people in the diaspora, there was the need to find our own culture, to find our
Babsy,
own way, to find our own
let me push back a little bit on that word you used, exported and imported. Now, we all know the evils of slavery, right? Some people call it a slave trade. I choose not to identify with that because calling it a slave trade suggests that it was a exchange. It was a fair exchange, right? Whereas it was anything but that. So I feel like if you use words like import and export, you are actually solidifying that mindset that the charter was legitimate. Don't you think so? Wouldn't you rather want to use words like extracted from the continent?
Well, it all, it's in the same, bracket or connotation. We were kind of, exploited in the same way. So when you use the word extract, I might want to agree more or gravitate more towards that because when I just say import, it's not that harsh like extract. So we're taken forcefully. our home. So, I think, thank you very much for,
Bless.
solidifying that point more, because extraction would give more weight to that process, how we were
Yes,
taken
and which
up
is more what really happened.
exactly. And that's just how it is. And so, like I was saying before,
Yeah.
because of the subhuman treatment that we as a people, like any other, race, we were being treated or maltreated, there was the need for, us to want to say, let's go back home. The home which was referred to otherwise as the promised land or otherwise as Zion is what we look up for. Like the Christian religion will promise, Christians heaven. The black people were promised the Zion to be a peaceful place where we go back and have our life back intact.
Yeah.
Our God-given lives, So this is how it is. So when some say the movement began in Jamaica, of course, yes, black people were taken out of Africa into the Caribbean, and they resettled in places like the Caribbeans. And so, we all wanted, that life or the freedom in our lives, and not to set, to hustle and die away in Babylon. And Babylon was meant to be the regions of suffering. So they wanted to free ourselves from all these regions and locations of suffering and resettle back in the promised land, otherwise known as Zion, Africa.
So this is all at the base of the Rastafari culture, right?
Exactly what it is when we talk, especially when we refer to them, to this culture as a movement. Then that is what it means. We wanted to move from one location of badness to a location of goodness, a location of hope, a location of, the freedom that we all dreamt about.
Now, Babsy, I'm going to ask you a two-pronged question, right? Because I've spoken with two different people who a lot of people would, even if they themselves don't see themselves as Rasta, and I think they do see themselves as Rasta, but people would recognize as Rasta, right? But they do not share the common thread of what I call the common thread that is the underlying factor in anybody who claims to be Rasta or who follows the concept of Rasta, right? The first is this: some people say that Zion, or like you just explained, all the repatriation and all of that, push that all away because it's just a state of mind, right? So wherever you live in the West, whatnot, Zion is just a state of mind. As long as you are able to achieve a certain state of mind, then you're good, right? Versus a physical repatriation to the motherland where the children were forcefully extracted. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is I've also met, in fact, just last week I had this interview with Jabba Opuni, who was saying something to the effect that as long as you are able to like if you were able to live up to a standard of morality, is how I understood what he was saying, then that's it. So all the other trappings, all the extra repatriation from the West, all the other things are not necessary. What's your take on that?
Well, I would say Rastafari, to begin with, is Afrocentric. And this is the reason why we advocate for Africa for Africans. We could be home and abroad doing other things, but at least the final destination should be home. That is why it is called Zion. What will you have a Muslim who is a staunch Muslim? Without having to go to Mecca, they don't see their lives fulfilled. It's the same with the Christian. They are always promised of a heaven. And the heaven, how does that relate to the Levity? Yeah, they say you have to suffer whilst you are on this physical or in this physical plane, so that once you die, you can inherit the heaven. Now, this concept, Rastafari see it as a joke because then we as Africans believe, or I strongly know that Africa is the the cradle of humankind. That's where it all began. That means we had the state of paradise or the state of heaven, the state of Zion, somewhere existing for us. And then something happened where this kind of state was taken away from us and leaving us into a suffering people. And so to go back into that state, there should be a location which makes it quite more easier and freer. For instance, how could I be pounding I have a culture. I come from Ghana. And then, in my culture, I have the way I eat, the way I speak, the way I dress. Now, when I go out to a different continent or in a different location, I cannot express myself, my natural giving life. I cannot live it in those same locations. Take it for instance. I am from Ghana. Now I relocate to Austria, where it's as cold as sometimes minus degrees. Do you believe I can still go with my bare foot into the snow like I do in the burning sun of 40 degrees? So it is not the same. Well, I might bear the cold for some time, which means that, for instance, if my work or for some reason I happen to travel to Europe, it shouldn't be that I, change that place to my home. Of course, some might want to, compromise on this reason where they say, okay, you know what, it is too hot where I come from.
Yes.
And now I enjoy the cold here. You might want to do some adaptation, but I believe as Africans, as Black people, and this was, contained in the initial message of the prophets like Marcus Garvey, who said, Africans should begin to look back to Africa. So even Marcus Garvey did go to the extent of acquiring a ship, not just a ship, but ships, to want to repatriate Black people from the diaspora back home, where their living is assured of better standards, better quality, and whatever.
So you're saying that the physical repatriation of actual bodies from the West back to the homeland where they were extracted is necessary, is a vital part.
It's a must, my brother. It's part of the agenda. It is part of the fulfillment. So just like I said, I made a comparison. A fulfilled Muslim, for instance, if I understand their culture or their religion, is one who must have lived his life, sacrifice or is in obedience with the laws of the religion, yeah? Mm-hmm. And then to seal it or to make it perfect is to make that pilgrimage, is to take that pilgrimage from whichever location to the Holy Land and back. That is where you have these people see their lives in fulfillment. So like I want to say, it's the same way for the African, for the Rasta man who, really want to live the life in reality to the core. At least to be a fulfilled Rastafarian, you have to, at least in the end, you have to have some settlement in Zion. And that is going to feel the essence of that real life.
Nice. All right. Before we move on, though, I would like to make my small take on the matter. When people say it's a state of mind or it's all the other stuff that is, let me start with the state of mind thing. Let's say you live in the West, right, where you are seen as a Black person, you are seen as a second or third class citizen. And this is a fact. This is not something that we are conjecturing or we are, hypothesizing on, okay? This is a fact. There are certain places where Black people just cannot go. And even if you go there, you only go in there in a certain capacity. So if you live in a place like that, and you think that your mindset, in your mind, that is paradise for you or that's Zion for you, over to you. I have very little to say about that. You understand? That's just my reaction to the state of mind thing. Because no matter what it is, the pride of place and the place of pride, right? Having a place that you can call home, having a place that you can call your own. Let's check this out. When the colonizers, when those people, those people, when they set out to go try to take over the lands and other things, they succeeded almost everywhere except Africa. They went to Australia. They took Australia. Australia is, a Western country right now. Canada,
That's it.
the United States of America. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? All of that. We can go on and on and on. Africa
That's
is the
it.
only land that stood its ground and still stood as Africa and kept it
Mhm.
its own and stood its ground in such a way that the stolen children, the extracted children, could actually go back to Africa physically
Hello. Yeah,
and
that's it.
own land, for instance, like the ancestors used to do. So if you're going
Mhm.
to let go of that for a place, for a what you call it, state of mind, when you're living in a place where when you go to the store, somebody pops out the other end of the aisle and is monitoring you, and you don't even know that, but that's your state of mind that you're in paradise. Enough said about that. And then the other one
Mhm.
too about the brother who says, yeah, as long as we're able to live to a certain standard and all of that. That's always been the case. That has
Mhm.
always been the case. The standard is part of the what do you call it, the liberty. But then
That's
what
it.
threads us together as Rastafari? Because as far as I'm concerned, living a righteous life runs through every single, let's call it religion, for argument's
Mhm.
sake, right? Because Rastafari is not a religion, but if you want to
No,
equate it on that level, or if you take it as a culture, or even as a culture, right?
it's a simple way of life.
Righteousness runs through everything. So, what
Exactly.
identifies you specifically as Rasta, it cannot just be living up to a certain standard. There's much more
No,
to it than
there is
that.
certain much more.
Yes, good. So let's move the discussion forward, Babsy. So,
You know, I would
yeah,
like
yeah.
to add just the
Add to that,
proverb
quick.
what you just said.
Mhm.
You know, my granny always used to, show I from I was growing up as a youth that when you are a banana
Mhm.
and you decide or you choose to live as an apple, you will
Mm.
always take a second class position.
There you go.
You can yeah, you can never be a first class banana if you are considered as an apple. So if you're an apple, you just only need to live as an apple to enjoy the full benefits of an apple. And a banana is in a different class. So a banana will have to live like a banana.
There
But
you go.
here's the case when we try to
There you go.
transpose, then we have the challenges, and these challenges are never going to be pretty.
There
But they
you
will
go.
always bring us into suffering and make us depressive. And then we have all those conclusions to draw. And that's it.
There you go. And again, if you take a banana from Kromanse and you take it to uh, München in Germany, it is
Right.
still a Kromanse banana. You know what I'm saying?
Certainly.
No matter what, it's as simple as that. Black people are black people, and they had a home.
Exactly.
We have a home. Some of us were
Mhm.
taken away.
Mhm.
They have
Yeah.
to go back home. It's up to them, really, because again,
Yeah.
let me also pick your mind on this before we go for the quick break. So
Yeah.
some people say that the earth is the Lord's and its fullness thereof. So it doesn't really even matter where you live. You know, the earth is the Lord's and its fullness thereof. So if I'm African and I decide that, okay, I want to go live in Bulgaria, and in my state of mind, that's my Zion because I get good environment and I get whatnot. And above all, like some of us say all the time, I get good incentives, good what do you call it, amenities like healthcare, transportation, all of that. Whilst in my homeland Zion, we'll come to that in the second part of the discussion. But in the meantime, what do you say to that? The earth is the Lord's and its fullness thereof.
Yeah, I agree the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. But then the point is you cannot substitute. The truth is just the truth, and there is no substitute for the truth. So, for instance, if in Africa we never have no change, no subtraction of time, no addition of time. You know what I mean? I mean, in Africa, we never have to adjust the time, which means that we have the natural weather, matching time. So
Man
we
said we
can
never
say,
change time.
right. So you can imagine over the life is being lived in its purest form as against the word, where you have 3 months of sunshine and 3 months of something else.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot compare these the same. For instance, we were just talking about, banana grown from Cromantin or from Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same as banana grown in Belgium or in Munich, because the weather conditions for these two areas vary.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they say, well, when you are in Rome, you behave like the Roman, and when you are somewhere else, behave like that other place. I believe in that more than the earth. Of course, we accept that the Creator, the Almighty, has given us creation as a whole, and therefore nowhere will be compared to the other and said this here is better, and depending on the individual's own experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you have places designed for specific needs and for specific people. For instance, if you take I as an African, when you check my weather condition plus my skin conditions, it is very, very proper the way the Almighty made the settings, in the sense that where there is the scorching sun, we have darker skin. And where you don't have the scorching sun, you have lighter skin. So, for instance, in Africa, people from under the sun are called melanated people because we have a certain quality of skin which have something, a property called melanin.
Mm-hmm.
When you live in the West, it is not the same. So, for me, as somebody who is adapting, who is trying to, adapt my living situation in Europe, there are times where I suffer even the lack of vitamin D, which is what I get naturally when I'm under the African skies.
Yeah.
You will not get the same when you move location, and these are things where, I as an individual would choose to say, yeah, you know what, I go here and I live for only a short time, because when I live the whole year under this weather condition, I get depressive by way of me losing this and those vitamins. And again, you go to Africa, there are many times when I travel back home, my brother, I tell you what, just to be under the sky, just to be experiencing the real African weather where I was born and bred and grown, I don't need food to give me energy. I depend so much on the environment to give my energy. So you can even imagine when I switch location, it's the same way I get deprived of the same energy.
All right. Yeah, man. Babsy, stick up and we'll
Yes,
be
sir.
right back in a second.
Bless it.
Yes, indeed. The reasoning tight. Yes. You know where you are. Radio culture on Groundation sabbatical mornings. It probably is not morning for some people, but it is morning for us here in the studios of Radio Culture in Texas, USA. Now, let's come back to the reasoning, but before we do that, let's give a quick acknowledgement to our sponsors. DuckPalm, the app. Thank you very much. If you live in Ghana or you have relatives that live in Ghana, of course, and you want to make sure that they have the same or at least close to good enough medical care that you have, you might think this is a dream. It really isn't a dream, because you know what? We have great doctors in Ghana. Just that accessing them sometimes is a problem. And that is why DocPalm has come. That's where DocPalm comes in. DocPalm has an app that if you download on your phone, you can use to access great healthcare at your own convenience. Take this scenario. You are out somewhere in the farm or somewhere and you meet a situation. Let's say you have a medical condition which makes you have to keep in constant touch with your doctor. This is how to do it. You download the DocPalm app, and that gives you direct video access with your doctor. So when you have some symptom or the other that you do not too much understand, you're not too sure of, quickly call your doctor on DocPalm, and he will tell you what to do before you have to go and see him or another doctor in a bigger hospital. Doc Palm, the app, is on the App Store and on Google Play Store. Go download it and use it. And when you do, you will be happy and you'll come back and thank me. In the meantime, we are going back to the reasoning, but let me also tell you about iCulture TV. iCulture TV is our sister platform that is test transmitting right now. You can go to www.ghnewsnow.com, or if you live in a country where you have access to Roku, you can go on the Roku channel and search iCulture TV, and you will get access to quality Afrocentric television programming. We are test transmitting right now. Why don't you stop by, take a peek, and see what we're talking about? iCulture TV. iCulture is spelled IKULCHA TV. iCulture TV. Thank you very much. Back on the line with Babsy. Babsy, I know you mentioned that you have to go, but I hope you can spare us a few more minutes, because there's a few more very interesting questions I need your take on. The question of repatriation, as we just discussed, right? Some people have raised concerns about that as something that, in practical terms, is it really practical for all Black people? As many as would love to, and at this point we don't know, right? So we would just say doors should be open to all Black people. But is it practical for all Black people to move back to Africa? Yeah. Did you hear the question, Babsy?
Yeah, go on. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was asking. People have asked, right? Looking at the practicality of the repatriation question, people have asked: is it practical for all Black people to move back to Africa?
Well, I'll say yes and no. Because I will start from the no, and then I'll narrow it down to the yes. You know what? Africa has been through all kinds of, different type of, if you like, we call it experiences. And the experiences has been from atrocious, from very negative through to positive. Yeah, the positive is, limited when you compare it to the negativity, yeah, which we've been through, yeah. And the reason is that, Africa is I and I as an educator know very well that Africa feeds the rest of the world. So Africa is referred to as the cradle of humankind. It's equally, or other words, means that, that is where it all began from. Right? So the reason why we say Africans should repatriate back home is that there was a calculated attempt in a particular time in the history of humankind to deprive Africa of its own natural resources, including the humans, or call it the human resources. So that's why there was, slavery, and it was so successful and all that. Now, after all these problems, or call it, part of the negative experiences that Africans were taken through, it was realized again by the prophets or by our forebearers that the only way to develop the continent, or to develop again the culture of the African, fully,
Are you ready?
stature, is that we must develop the continent. And there is no way you can agree with me that, when a race begins, we are 10 people partaking in a race, and then 5 people are given, a starter up. So they are given, for instance, 5 meters to go in the lead. And then the rest of us remain, no matter what. When the whistle is blown for start, we will definitely appear as last. So what do I mean by that? In the beginning, or somewhere along the line, Africa became the hoodlum of slavery. So a lot, like we were just using the word, we were extracted from our homeland and taken into the diaspora to work and to slave and to do all those negatives, yeah? And now the continent is being left, it's been, that was a land that has been deprived of so much, from the natural resources, which is still being, being taken away forcefully, illegally. Whichever way you want to describe the process through which our natural resources have been depleted from the continent is one. And as it stands today, Africa is being considered as a third world. My brother, I find this is one of the unfairest, description you can have been put on us. Third world or underdeveloped or developing, continent. It is never true. Africa was one time we had the first university as far as the history of humankind is concerned. The first university that was ever grounded on this globe was in Timbuktu. And then how come in today they call it, the 20th century, and beyond, Africa is being considered as a developing continent, or as whatever word is being used. I don't accept that. So again,
hello.
Yeah. So, like I did say, it is just that because of this deprivation plus all that negative experiences that we have been taken through, our prophets did realize the only way to develop this continent and bring it back to its God-given, natural state is for us to go back home and develop.
When you say our prophet, please clarify that for me.
Yeah, so the prophet one is Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who did prophecy for Africans, to look back home for the crowning of the king. And it wasn't just for recognizing a kingship role in Africa, but it is for us to revert back to where we were.
All right. So my understanding is that you think that it's actually possible for Africans for Africa to contain as many black people as decide to repatriate.
My brother, there is more than enough virgin lands that are left to just burn or to just, there is so much space. Even when we consider bringing every black man on the globe to Africa, there will still be space.
Okay, now let's go to the second part of the question. Is it desirable? Right. Is it desirable? Is it something we really want to do? Let's call a spade a spade. Let's do brass tacks here, right? Because I'm saying this. I went to a certain office some time ago with Kex Pongo, President Kex. We went to a certain office in the ministries, and we're having a chat with government official, where Kex brought up the issue of repatriation, and then we're talking. The person kind of like sneered at the idea, and was asking if we really think it was a good thing to do, looking at it in practical terms. There are people who have all different kinds of reasons why they think that repatriation is not desirable. Take that question on for me.
Well, I would say this way, Africa needs its sons and daughters to come help develop the land, but again, not everybody qualifies to go back to the land. There are some people whose hands are really soiled with the negativity, even worse off than the slave masters. So such people are not needed. But then again, who is going to check who comes?
Exactly.
So once we don't have these instruments to put a check on who flies in and who is not allowed to come in, then we might say it will be null and void to say no, it's not possible. However, by our deeds, we are all known. So for instance, if I am a murderer, my lifestyle shows that I am a murderer. I wouldn't have any comfortable space in a conscious community. So then again, this is why we need, with our consciousness, to develop our communities to the state where we are, relating with each other, with that union, with that communism, or with, to commune amongst ourselves. That is why the subject is Rasta. And once we all identify as such, at least it is like a language that we all speak. And it fosters the love better. This is why, another prophet like Bob Marley sings so much about one love and preach so much about one love, because
So,
we all
Babsy,
look at the picture.
yeah. So let me. It's my job to. It's my.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So let me play the advocate, right? Because from the discussion with this person that I'm speaking about, his concern was that, and we did push back on it, trust me, but his concern was that after so many years out in the West, some of our brothers and sisters, some of our kith and kin have adopted certain cultures, certain lifestyles, certain things which we still see as alien. He mentioned gun culture as an example, right?
Yeah.
Shootings in America, whatnot, all these things. And then also certain areas that I don't even want to go into, right? But he mentioned certain things that he thinks that will be brought home onto the continent. That was his concern. I want you to react before I tell you what our pushback was on that.
Yeah, this is why I say by our fruits we shall all be identified. So you cannot deny, a leopard of its identity because it's falling into fire. No, the skin might get burned, but the spot
That's you cannot deny a leopard its identity because it's falling in fire. Right. Quote that and make sure you put that in the name of Jababze in the book of quotes. Yes, African wisdom that.
Right, it's inevitable, and it's a fact that you cannot deny that all black people we come from the same source.
Even if they are bad people, it's still their home.
Of course, that is what it is. So
yeah. You know what? And then my pushback to let me quickly mention our pushback to it that time was also that they may be bringing these things as you mentioned, but also consider the volume of knowledge that they would bring back. Consider the volume of investment that they will bring. Do you know how much money is in the hands of black people in the diaspora? Ghana is looking for $3 billion from the World Bank. I know certain people here in America who can sign that check for them if they were allowed to. There are so many black people who can sign one single check for that amount, right? So do you know how much investment they will bring back? Do you know how much knowledge and experience they would also bring back, in addition to all these other stuff that you are scared they would bring back? That was our pushback. But anyway, Buzzy, please signal me if it's time for you to go, because I know you did mention that do you have to go right now, or you can spend the next 15 minutes with us?
Well, we can actually deal with the next 15 minutes.
Okay. Because the program is rounding up in 15 minutes. So if you can graciously grant us that time, I'll be a very happy man.
Yeah, okay. So
nice.
Go ahead.
All right.
Let's do it.
So let's look into the repatriation thing. Yes, nice. So let's look into the repatriation thing even deeper, right? Because let's look at the question of dual citizenship. A lot of the people who repatriate, and I had this discussion with Black Rasta, and he was very, very much against dual citizenship. Okay, and I feel his pain to a large degree, but I also think that he was also, overlooking certain aspects. But here's the thing. A lot of people would repatriate from the West, but they'll still hold on to their Western identities and their Western comforts and their Western passports and all of that. If push comes to shove, if shite hits the fan, like we say, they ride back where they went, they came from. So it makes that whole thing like some Africans feel like, no, it's they are missing out because they are willing to share the continent with brothers and sisters who are ready to repatriate back home. But then a lot of these people are not really committed to that process. They are like half and half, right? They're here, but they also go there for all the benefits that it has to offer. And then they come back and enjoy good weather and good food and sunshine.
Mhm. So, for me, it is like this. Shakespeare made a very important statement: to be or not to be.
Mhm.
And this is where we have Rasta's reflection coming in. You know, when you are Rasta, you identify in a certain way. And it's all about the culture, the way of life. So, for instance, if I identify with as a Rasta man, there are I have my limits too, but there are defined tenets to my lifestyle, and that qualifies or identifies me as a Rasta to even the recognition of a neighbor or a passerby who sees me and say, "Oh, the way this man is going on, I think he's one of these people," and that's what it is. So, this is the essence and the significance or the importance of the culture Rasta. And if we Africans or black people should all identify under this tenet, it makes things easier or it makes our lifestyle much more easier. This is why we are people like, Bob Marley preaching or teaching the way of the African, as simple as it should be. Some people misconstrue it by way of mixing up with other cultures, by way of mixing up with other locations, and by way of mixing up with other experiences, which draws their attention into those things. But a fish can best live in water and not on land. So no matter how a fish will try, this is what Chinua Achebe said this. If you see a frog, grows, no, they said the mangrove grows in water, but that doesn't make it a fish. You understand? So an African might choose to live anywhere else, might choose to adopt any other lifestyle. But again, when you narrow it down to how you're supposed to live, then you find out that something is missing. It's only when you rather consider, wow, what am I missing? Apart from all that you have been God given, then you still consider there is something missing. This is what drives some people to that crazy extent of wanting to even lose or give away their identity or continent for a piece of land or for some, different thing. For me, the essence of my culture teaches me that there is more value where I come from, plus, who I am made of. And once I turn to those values begin to reflect in me, hence my essence as part of, the human race. So me as a black man, I have my position in the world. It is no competition for us to be living side by side each other, like His Majesty even told us. We have to learn to tolerate others, be it in faith, be it in race, be it in political, whatever. And that's how we can live side by side each other. But I, as a black man, I, as a Rasta man, will never want to forget my role or my identity. I will not give it away for another because I know the essence it serves in my life as who I am.
Nice. Babsy, so before we move on I want us to spend the last few minutes on Ghana, right? Ghana music, the Ghana music scene, the reggae dancehall, whatever scene. We'll get to that for the last 10 minutes.
Sure, yeah.
But in a few lines, tell me, do you think Africa is ready for her children abroad? Do you think Africa is ready for repatriation?
Well, Africa is super. Africa has always been ready. The only thing is that we should prepare our hearts to be able to rope in. And once we prepare our hearts, remember, preparing our hearts don't mean the Red Bull green that we put on. It doesn't mean the kind of thing we smoke, or it doesn't mean the food we are eating. But preparing ourselves, meaning is that we know the agenda, because there is a life line. There is a timeline, otherwise called. You know what I mean? And the world is gravitating towards that. So if we find ourselves as Black people, as Rasta people, having a contribution to make to the global development or advancement or evolution or revolution, then we know the time is now for us to equally change the narrative of our own self, let alone our contribution to the rest of the world.
Nice. Babsy, let's look at Ghana music. Ghana reggae dancer. Right now, my head is spinning with the divisions and the titles and all of that. You know, somebody so this one is not reggae, that's not dancehall. That's yo. Listen, me, I know say reggae and I know say dancehall came out of reggae. Whatever came out of that, I'm not familiar with. I'm just putting that on record right now. Okay, everything else is either some Afro pop, Afro fusion, whatever it is. Every music is music. I love all music. I listen to Papua New Guinean music if it sounds good to my ears, right? So I'm not putting any music down. What I'm saying is that as far as I'm concerned, all that subdivisioning and all of that, I'm not. It makes my head spin. So I'm just saying this to clarify my definition of the genre that we are trying to identify, right? Or we're trying to discuss. Ghana reggae dancehall. What is the state right now? What do you see from where you sit? And I know you are very involved.
Well, the point is that I only see that there is more room for improvement. We are not there at all. You know, when I consider our readiness, I am the one who's always agitated for, we say we are African, but we sometimes lose ourselves.
Did you step away from your phone a bit? You sound a bit far.
Is it better? Can you hear me good?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, what I'm meaning is that, I only see us, not ready for especially what is going on globally, because now we say that by reason of technology, the world has become like a global village.
Yeah.
So something happens in Kalahari, the next minute you can find news of the same happening in, let's say Austria or in Russia. It's very normal. So what I would say is that in this time, especially people of Ghana, who say they are, gravitating towards, this genre of music or reggae, are not really ready, because there is so much messages that when at least I consider reggae as a standard genre of music, it only talks, especially when you consider where it reggae, the inception or where it is coming from. It was always to present the story of the sufferers. It was always talking or describing the lifestyle or otherwise the culture of the suffering people. And these are the same people referred to as the Rasta people or the African people or the Black people. Now, somewhere along the line, the messages of the same mission of music or reggae began to change. So instead of presenting the real lifestyle of the people, it's only to rather present the hype style of the people. So for instance, people are beginning to talk about guns, talk about women, talk about sex and crime. But normally we are people who consider.
And not just talking about this. Let's get that clear, because reggae music was talking about these things too in a more refined way, or it was speaking against these things, right? So let's make that point clear, because I think what you're trying to say is that this music that you're referring to started glorifying these negative things.
Now, yeah, that is. Thanks so very much for the support. Yeah. So now, instead of bringing out those negatives to keep us aware or informed about what we have to do or how we have to do, we're beginning to rather glorify those negatives, which is misleading a lot. So it's losing the inspiration that it used to draw from, especially the common people. You understand?
Yeah.
And then again, there are other influences like people who are actually representing the music. They are being discriminated against. They are not being given a fair platform to channel their cause. And so a lot of people end up giving away this thing which belongs to them, thinking because of the criticism or the way they are being criticized, they have to find other ways to express themselves. So this is where I see a lot of time there is coming so much mix up and so much external influence in this genre of music or reggae in Ghana.
But
We have to.
But on the positive side, who are some of the artists that you think have potential on an international stage?
Oh man, it began way back and somewhere along with this lost. So there were bands like Kente who went all the way to represent on the international scene. Yeah, there was Vitamin X. There was there were great bands that qualified even way back before the 90s to represent Ghana.
Roots Anabo, who went to the Sunsplash.
So imagine, they were sharing stages with all the great bands from those times, coming from the Caribbean, wherever. But now, rather, where we are in modern times, at least Ghana has lost that representation on especially the international scene, where you say, oh, this is reggae coming from Ghana. We only now have copied versions of the same thing coming from elsewhere. So in Ghana, most of the artists who have taken interest, especially in the genre, don't want to represent authentically, but rather they want to copy from somebody else because they think that person's style and art or skill is more flourished than what they can really present from themselves authentically.
Well, but who are some of the acts though? Who are some of the acts that give you hope?
Well,
the young ones especially.
I have very serious names, but these names are not, common or household names.
That's who we want to hear. That's who we want to hear, because we want to start following these ones, right? We've already heard from those.
There is the likes of Jawais.
Jawais
is a very good youth. There is the likes of Chidi Farai. The name goes on and on.
And Jaffinger. I think Jaffinger has got great talent also, right? Ellis Koina is another one.
We have serious names.
We do. We'll have a different discussion about that in particular, right? I just wanted to set the tone for that for a later date. So thank you very much, my brother. And any last words before we go?
Well, I would say that, it's been very impressive talking to you. I like the direction of your discussion, same way too. And I would like an extended version, same way of the same thing, so that we can talk in depth and bring that knowledge to our people, because this is what is, most important, the positive interaction like this one. So
it's a must.
The vision of Nkrumah, that unless unless we are all connected as Africans, the independence of Ghana is truly meaningless. So it's not an individual thing. We need to fight culture. It's not just Ghana, but on the continent of Africa, we should all freely identify ourselves through the same spectacle or under the same banner. And that's how easy this life can be for all of us.
Absolutely. And I want to say that the purpose of this program, Groundation, is exactly what it sounds. Groundation, we are grounding together, just like I would do on the Sabbath morning and pull out the bingy drums and the kettle drums and beat it and reason together and find, the best reasonings forward and things like that. That's exactly what's happening on this platform. So if you're listening to this show and you have something that you seriously want to discuss, get in touch and let's bring it on. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Babzi. You have brought such enlightenment to this platform. And like I said, this is not going to be the last time at all. We will be coming to you again and again and again and again and again for different topics as we go along. Thank you so much. Enough respect. Every time. One love. Yeah, man. Yes, indeed. This has been Groundation on Radio Culture. And my guest was Ja Babsy, reaching us directly from Australia. Next week, we are going to be bringing you another topic. Look on our social media for the announcements, because we'll be putting out flyers with the information of our guests, the topic, etc., on our social media. Go on Facebook or other social media and look for GH News Now. Telling you once more about our new sister platform, iCulture TV. iCulture TV is on the Roku platform, or if you don't have access to Roku, just go to www.ghnewsnow.com and you will be on the latest thing happening in Black entertainment and television programming. I'm out of here in a few seconds, but before I do, I just want to say one more time that we thank our sponsors, Doc Pam, the app for getting in touch with your medical professionals. I'll be back later on in the day to throw down some sabbatical roots rhythms. And then tomorrow, we have Commander Messiah on the artist profile on Reggae Reverbs. I'm out of here. My name is Ja, beloved. Until such times, blessed love, Satamasagana.